Good evening, everybody. Everybody get full? The food was good, right? So my name is Ryan Vandenhoek, and I am a former resident of Kingdom Boundaries. I am the son of Shelley Legg, who is sitting over there. She is my biological mother. I am also the son of Leroy and Mary Vandenhoek. They adopted me when I was just an infant. And they raised me here in South Dakota on a farm just outside of Corsica, if anybody is familiar with that. I was raised in a loving home. I was raised to love my parents, to try to live the right way. But in many ways, I, like many young people, decided to rebel and to try to carve my own path in life. And unfortunately, those decisions led me to make poor choices. And those poor choices led me to events that brought me to prison. So I was 16 years old when I went to prison. And I served 24 consecutive years in the state penitentiary. So my entire 20s, my entire 30s were all in prison. And it may seem like a very cruel thing to send a kid to prison. And in many ways, perhaps it is. But that was the plan that God had in store for me. And when I got there, I didn't know what to think about prison. I didn't know what to think about the experience. I didn't know what was going to be in store for me. And I didn't know if I was going to make it until the end. I didn't know if I was going to see it through, if I was going to survive the experience. But God had a plan for me. And He put people in my life that changed my life forever. And many of those men were men that had been there for many years already. Older men who saw a young man in need of guidance, a young man who needed mentorship. And they did that for me. They didn't know me. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know anything about me. They just saw a young man that was starting out a new chapter in his life and someone who was going to be there for a very long time. And so it was through that mentorship and through their examples that I learned how to navigate that prison life. And thankfully, through that mentorship and through that upliftment that I received from them, I really started to flourish within the prison system. And I started to make decisions then that would set me up for success after I left prison. So I learned trades. I did carpentry, I did sewing, I did all sorts of things. And eventually I found myself in the metal trades. So I learned how to weld, I learned how to fabricate, and eventually I became a CNC plasma operator. And those skills that I learned in prison really helped me to set myself up for after prison. So shortly before I was going up for parole, there was a job fair down in Springfield Penitentiary. And there I met a young man who was a recruiter from Custom Truck Equipment. And they are a company in Sioux Falls. They outfit anything from pickups all the way to big semis with anything that they need. Whether it's stuff for your pickup like bed liners, roll bars, step bars, anything like that, all the way to big trucks where we install roll-off kits to pick up roll-off boxes. So we do a lot of great things there. And he met me. I was able to show him my resume and my portfolio. And he looked down, looked at me, he looked back up at me, and then he looked back down, and he says, "I want to offer you a job right now." And I just couldn't believe it, that here I was, a guy that had been in prison for 24 years, and somebody wanted me to come work for them. They didn't care how long that I had been in prison. They didn't care what I had been in prison for. They were just judging me based off the merits that I presented to them. And that was an awesome feeling, because as a man who's been in prison for a very long time, sometimes you feel a little bit scared about that. How are people going to judge you? How are people going to perceive you? Are people going to restrict you and inhibit you because you've been in prison? And yet here was a man that didn't care about any of those things. And so I was able to get out and get that job at Custom Truck Equipment. That's where I'm currently employed. And they're a wonderful company. And the same thing can be said about Kingdom Boundaries. Kingdom Boundaries didn't care what I was in prison for, how long that I had been in prison. They didn't care about any of that. They just saw a man that needed the help he needed to start a new, successful life outside of prison. And so that's what Kingdom Boundaries did. And in their pamphlet, which I hope every one of you has at your table, on the inside, on the bottom paragraph, it says, Kingdom Boundaries staff walks alongside each resident, helping them establish and promote personal responsibility, accountability, integrity, employment, financial and time stewardship, and restoring relationships with family, friends, and community. And that's exactly what every single man who comes out of prison needs. They need someone to walk alongside them, and that's exactly what Kingdom Boundaries did for me. Not only the day-to-day staff, but the board members, and I would be remiss to omit the friendships that I made while I was in prison. Many of those men are sitting here today. Many of those men I have formed relationships for many years while I was in prison. And when I got out of prison, every single one of them were there to support me, to help me, to offer their prayers, and to just be there for a friend. And that really meant the world to me, because I really didn't know how it was going to be. How am I going to navigate this new world? How am I going to successfully do the things that I need to do to survive out here? And yet, through Kingdom Boundaries, through friendships, things have been very easy for me, and all the praise goes to God for that. So, as far as what I'd like to convey to all of you about Kingdom Boundaries and your present and continued future support of Kingdom Boundaries, is that there are many men and many women who are currently incarcerated who need the same experience as what I had. And to continue to do that, Kingdom Boundaries needs the support from every single one of us, from all of us former residents, and from all of you supporters. Kingdom Boundaries survives off of the support of every single one of us. And that's exactly what the men and women who are currently on the inside need the most. And so if we can find it within ourselves, if we can find it within our pocketbooks, and if we can find it within our friends and family who may not know about Kingdom Boundaries, but hopefully when we leave here tonight, we can share what we know and what we love about Kingdom Boundaries with them, then hopefully this seed of support can start to grow and flourish and prosper beyond the walls of this building, beyond the walls of our homes that we go to every night, and it can spread beyond that. And hopefully next year, when we have this same event, not only will we have the tables filled up, but we'll have all these chairs filled up as well. And hopefully next year we'll have even more money to be able to donate to help the men and women that will be at Kingdom Boundaries, but also to help fund wonderful things like this new building and also other projects that Kingdom Boundaries has going on. So with that, thank you very much. I appreciate all of your time. I appreciate you coming here and taking the time out of your lives to support Kingdom Boundaries here tonight. And I would like to ask that during the closing prayer that a prayer be offered for the safety of the men who are currently at Kingdom Boundaries. There's been a lot of stuff going on in Sioux Falls, particularly in that neighborhood. Very dangerous things. People are losing their lives through violence. And so for the men who are currently staying there, please pray for their safety. That God will watch over them and God will protect them as they enter out into the world and they try to navigate this new life of theirs as well. So please pray for them as well. Thank you very much.